All righty. So Beth's going to help me kind of monitor chat and things like that. I can't see you all anymore. But we are going to have definitely some interaction tonight. So and there will be a couple times where I pause the PowerPoint so I can see you. But in the meantime, ignore that this date says September 20th because that's clearly incorrect. But welcome to our third workshop in this series on Empower, Embrace, and Evolve. I always like to start with a quick recap of the first two sessions, so we'll do that quickly. I'll start with just some definitions. Again, empower, to give someone the authority to do something. Embrace, to accept or support willingly and enthusiastically. And evolve, to develop gradually, especially moving from something simple to something more complex. A lot of what we're talking about in this series is not simple, but can be quite complex. So I ask this every time. I'm going to ask you again to think of your club. Don't say anything out loud, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your club in each of these areas: empower, embrace, and evolve? And think of your club as a whole, not just, think of each and every member. Is every single member empowered to make decisions, to take action? Do you accept and support each member willingly and enthusiastically? And do you see your willingness to accept every club member and to be open to their ideas growing? So my goal in this series is for each of you to be honest about where you stand personally and as a club, and for you to learn how to improve in all of these areas. And of course, as always, when I say you, I include myself because I'm learning right along with you. So this is again about making sure that we are a welcoming and accepting group of Seroptimists, and that we're harnessing the power of all of our members working together rather than working against each other. And just like this group of animals in this picture, we're all unique human beings. Well, we're humans, they're not, that bring something different to the table. So tonight we're going to be talking about inclusive communication. So our words matter, even words that aren't spoken. We're going to talk about what inclusive communication means, why it matters, and how we can strengthen our Seroptimist community by being more mindful and respectful communicators. Our words shape belonging, and this workshop is designed to help us build spaces where every voice is heard and valued. So here's what we're going to cover tonight. First, we'll define inclusive communication. Then we'll look at common barriers, including microaggressions, which we talked about last time, those that we may use unintentionally. We'll practice some inclusive approaches together. And finally, we'll identify one personal commitment to take with us on this topic. So this is a learning space, never about perfection and always about growth. What is inclusive communication? It is communication that makes space for everyone and avoids harmful assumptions. So I'm going to ask, can anyone read this slide? Okay, don't even try. Sometimes this is how our words can sound to others. Just a mishmash of things that don't make a lot of sense. Can anyone think of an example in our Seroptimist clubs that this image could represent in terms of the language that we use? Caitlin?
For me, I definitely feel that way when financial reports come out. Um, and especially in the board, when we are approving finances and stuff, it's taken a while for me to fully understand and grasp the concept of how we run financially.
Perfect. That's a great example. Thank you. Anyone else? can't see you. So you have to like raise your hand button or just start talking.
Maria has a
Okay,
question.
Maria.
Sometimes, to me, I look at it, and not just for Optimists, but other organizations, is when new ideas are trying to be approached, and the older members might not understand, and the young, and vice versa when older I think it's kind of that. I guess it's communication bearer is what it represents to me, is until you get it all sorted out.
Okay. Donna?
I think we just had a bit of an example here with the Live Your Dream. And it's just the person who wanted to do it, was really enthusiastic and so on and so forth, but didn't quite understand the portal and having to sign the confidentiality and time restraints and what that exactly meant for the next level. So that kind of, not to mention everybody has abbreviations for everything in life, the LYD and the DIBI and all
Right.
of those types of things. So anyway,
No, that's the number one example I was thinking of is just our use of acronyms. And I think we try really hard and but sometimes we forget. It could even be a member that's, been in the club for 1 or 2 years that we don't really consider brand new, but we still might use language that they don't understand. Denise?
Judi, oh, before
Oh,
we get to Denise,
okay.
Linda's having problems seeing your screen. Is there any, I don't know how to help her with that.
Is anyone else having issues seeing it?
I think everybody else sees it.
Um, Linda, are you on your iPad or laptop or
Or phone.
phone?
Sometimes if it's phone or laptop, if you slide it over, there's like 3 separate screens.
up above too, it says, you are viewing Judi Sanderlin's screen, view
Right.
options. Maybe one of those could work.
Let me know, Linda.
Okay.
Okay, Denise.
Denise.
I was just going to say that I also find that just different backgrounds, like I come from a science background, and there's some people in our club who come from, say, a more managerial, like in a bank kind of background. And so sometimes we're talking about things and they're using phraseology that I don't understand, or I might be saying something that they don't understand just because we're just coming from different backgrounds like that.
Yep, that
In
makes
addition to
perfect
all
sense.
the acronyms that we use.
Yep. Yep. Well, keep those things in mind as we go throughout the evening. So to further define inclusive communication, it includes these things. So it includes respectful language, right? Respectful of different backgrounds, perspectives, experiences, and it avoids making assumptions. The second thing it includes is clear and accessible communication. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but using clear language, right? And the third is active listening. So we can talk all we want, we can hear, but if we're not actively listening, then it's easy for people to not feel valued and like the space is safe for them to contribute their ideas. Well, now my things start, there we go. So as a global organization, we interact with members and program participants from many cultures, generations, and lived experiences. Communication that is inclusive helps us to build trust and foster belonging, and it also improves our leadership and the impact of our programs. So for example, when we're working with Live Your Dream participants, lots of diverse backgrounds, sometimes language barriers, in fact, often language barriers. And so we can get this into Room at Be It as well. Girls from all kinds of different backgrounds. And so we need to communicate at a level that reaches everyone. I thought that you all might like to see this graphic that shows the 5 federations of Seroptimus International, including our own, which is red, just to kind of see where the different clubs are throughout the world, not just our own. So you'll see that, we look big because we're red, and yellow looks big. And it's kind of interesting with Africa being the newest federation to see just where the clubs are right now. So there's still a lot of parts of Africa that we're not covering. That's kind of a side note, but just a reminder that we are a global organization and we're interacting with women and girls from all over. I'd like you to now just take a moment of reflection. I'm just going to give you 30 seconds or so for this. I'd like you to think of a time when communication either helped you feel very included or a time when communication lended to you feeling excluded. So give you just a few seconds to see if you can come up with an example for yourself. Things to think about. What was said or not said? What tone was used?
Do you want us to find examples from like our experiences in Seroptimist or just overall?
It could be anywhere. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. If you have a Seroptimist example, that's helpful. But you don't have to. Chris.
Hey. The first thing that pops into my head was cost accounting. I think I was in another language class.
As someone that does cost accounting, I can understand that.
Sorry, I had nothing to do with Seroptimus, but it was certainly above my head. I was
Yes, I agree. Tammy?
Okay, so personally, when I'm with my grandson, we have one-on-one conversations. I'm very included. But when his girlfriend's with us, it's like they're in this bubble and I don't exist. And so I feel very excluded and I'm just super selfish about it and cry about it.
Well, what kinds of things make you feel excluded? Did they just not talk to you anymore?
Exactly. They don't talk to me at all.
Okay.
They're just blah, 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 all amongst themselves. And then it's like I'm not even there.
Okay. Anyone else?
Okay, I don't know how to raise my hand. I'm so sorry. Can
Is
somebody
that
tell me how-
Kelly?
It is. Okay, I'm going to figure out how to raise my hand, but since I'm already interrupted, for me, it's more when feeling excluded, the way somebody will, I take it as blowing you off, like maybe doesn't, rather than explain it to you, they'll say something like, "Oh, don't worry about it. We got this," or, "That's not anything you need to worry about." Well, maybe, but if I understand how it works or why you're doing it, I can be much more included and feel much better about this conversation. And that's in Seroptimist and work, and my boss does it to me all the time. We talk about it all the time. So I think for me, that's a big thing.
That's a great example, Kelly, because that happens a lot. Like, trying to explain something and then at some point you kind of just decide, never mind, it's just easier to just deal with this myself. And you're sending a message that, either you're not able to grasp it or I'm not explaining it well enough or whatever. So that's a great example.
Yeah. And I'm probably guilty of it myself, honestly. I try not to do it, but it happens because sometimes it's just easier, but
Sure.
it's not
Sure.
cool.
Donna?
So we just had our Christmas party, and I had decided that we were going to, for Seroptimus, I decided we were going to go to a restaurant this time instead of doing our, all the time potluck,
Mhm.
whatever. because I just wanted us to do something nice for ourselves. And it was funny because the gal who actually suggested where to go, when we're asking who's coming, she didn't raise her hand. She didn't want to come. And so I asked her over the phone and she said, well, I just don't have anything, Donna. She goes, I just don't have anything in common. And I'm like, how could you not have anything in common? You're a woman. We're all women. I don't get that. And so it actually just wound up. So I wound up taking her. I kind of made her feel guilty and brought her. And she had the best time. She had the best time. And I think she felt like she was kind of like an odd duck. That's just how she feels. I think it was the way, her first marriage and that kind of thing, but it had nothing to do with what I was thinking, which is, our club has had some issues in the past. It had nothing to do with that. So I think the fact that we communicated really helped with that, because I could have just let it go. And I didn't want to let it go.
So great. Thank you, Donna, model student of the day. So you noticed something, you were observant, no words were said. You just noticed someone wasn't participating and you reached out and made sure that they felt included. I think one of the examples that comes to mind for me a lot is, like say in a meeting, when there are lots of side conversations and whispering, like that is by definition excluding everyone else that's not part of that side conversation or whispering, right? And I think that's something we need to be very, very cautious about. Anything else before we move on? Okay.
I have something, sorry.
Go ahead.
I have something to add. Something that we're dealing with right now is I'm starting to move our club into a lot more of the digital age.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the older members, I think, are feeling a little bit uncomfortable with that and a little bit overwhelmed. And so I'm a little concerned about that.
Yeah, Denise, that's a great example. And that's something that we all deal with, right? So it's easy just to assume, oh, let's just have a Zoom meeting. We've gotten used to it, but not everybody is equally comfortable with it. And that's a very real issue. So thanks for bringing that up. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk about barriers to inclusive communication. So sometimes the barriers are obvious. For example, if you're communicating with someone that speaks an entirely different language and doesn't speak yours, or you don't speak theirs. But sometimes the barriers are more subtle. So we make assumptions based on age, based on language ability, education, cultural background, comfort with technology, to follow Denise's example. So we use acronyms. We've talked about that. Or in meetings, certain voices may dominate while others are interrupting a lot, or get interrupted. Being aware of these patterns is the first step in shifting them, right? So what we don't know, we can't fix, but once we know it, we should try, right? Okay, so here's kind of the meat of what I want to talk about tonight. So 5 principles of inclusive communication. Number 1, and we're going to go through some examples as we go through these. Number 1, use people first or identity respecting language. Can anyone think of an example of that? I'll give you one to get you thinking. For example, we say firefighter instead of fireman. You think of other examples where we can be people first or identity respecting.
Using the word chair instead of chairman.
Yep. Perfect. There's all kinds of examples like that, right?
On like, I know like on website content, you use you instead of, you meaning the reader. It would be written more in I statements than
Yep, that makes sense.
generic. Yeah.
Mhm. It really just comes down to kind of it I say this a lot, but it kind of comes down to respect, right? Like and it's hard to change our language, but we've seen this cultural shift for sure over the last, decade, if not more. But we need to be conscious about it, so um when we say things like, chairman, maybe we don't think twice about that. But to someone else, it could feel exclusive, right? So be mindful of certain words that we use frequently without thinking about it. Again, a lot of this is unintentional, um, but we're by definition, and the words we choose can be exclusive or inclusive. Okay, the second principle is avoiding assumptions and ask instead. So if you were at our last workshop, you recall I put up photos of 6 different women and said, which of these would you choose to be your leader? And we talked about how we immediately form opinions of people based solely on their appearance. And it's always better to ask and find out more questions than to assume something based on appearance. The third principle is to be aware of power dynamics. So who tends to speak the most or who tends to get interrupted? And remember to use language that language can be used to assert dominance. So keep that in mind. For example, making a declarative statement rather than asking a question. And I see this a lot. I see it in my club, but I see it in other clubs as well. I've seen many conversations just shut down because someone stepped in and just declared something to be true, whether it's true or not. There could be a conversation going, some back and forth, and then you have this dominant person that will step in and say, well, this is the way it is. And it kind of shuts off the conversation, right? Has anyone experienced that? Have you ever felt shut down because someone just kind of dismissed your opinion and said something else is true? I'm glad you haven't experienced it. I have. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
We all have.
Kelly has her
I
hand
think
up.
we all
Yes.
have, yeah.
I'm like shaking, yes.
I
Yes.
see a lot of people shaking their heads, yes, but not saying anything. So
Yeah, I mean, I
we
think
all
that's
have.
a really good one for us to be mindful of because that's something that I do see a lot. And there are times when you're looking for an expert opinion, right? Like there are times when you need someone to say, this is the answer. But that's not always the case. And you could have a reasonable discussion and debate and even disagreement on something. And then when someone steps in and says, that's wrong or something, it kind of shuts down. So we don't want to do that. Okay,
I've had an example where I worked in planning, and so I knew the definitions of planning terms, and somebody said, well, this is what this means. And I was like, no, it doesn't. But it was like, this is what it is. It's like, okay, it's not worth arguing at that
Yeah.
point.
Well,
I think
we've all been victims of mansplaining, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, amen.
Which,
Yeah.
that's the term we use, but it doesn't have to be a man. Like we could do that to each other, right? Um, yeah, just being very conscious of being too knowledgeable or coming across as a know-it-all can exclude people. Donna?
I just wanted to say, and this is in Seroptimist and at work, I see a lot of times where people, men and women, who have maybe a lack of confidence in themselves, actually try to be a little bit forceful in how they are and act like they know more than what they actually do. I don't think they always understand how they're coming across. I mean, I've experienced that type of thing happen.
Linda, did you have your hand up?
I do. I can see everything now.
Oh, good.
Uh, we have had at meetings sometimes where someone is absolute about this is what SIA says, or this is how it is in Seroptimist, and nobody, has something in front of them to say, no, that's wrong, but it's very, said with authority. And so we've ended up maybe having to go back and check and find, what is the fact and then come back to it. But that's uncomfortable. It definitely makes people just step back and not want to share things.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to actually latch onto that and use it in example later. So I'm glad you brought that up. So we're going to talk about how we could do that differently. Okay, I'm going to move on. So the fourth principle, using plain language that everyone has access to, so the information is shared equally, right? This is probably the easiest thing for us to overcome. So we've talked about acronyms in our speech with Seroptimist. We tend to do that, but I can tell you, and I'm sure you all know from other parts of your life, that happens everywhere. It's not just something Seroptimists do. It happens at work. It happens anywhere you go. But being very mindful about what's commonplace language to us may not be to someone else. So if we focus on keeping our language understandable to everyone, then we will improve in being inclusive. And the final one is to practice inclusive listening. So not just hearing words, but understanding the person behind the words. It's a deliberate effort to understand, interpret, and respond to messages communicated by others. Not just hearing the words, but also understanding the context, emotions, and underlying meaning. So you probably all witnessed a situation where somebody says something and their body language or tone says something totally different. And we need to really be attuned to those sorts of things. It's not just about the words. And that's one of the hard things about Zoom, I think, to Denise's earlier point is you do miss some of the kind of subtle communication cues when you're not seeing someone in person, but they're still there. If you've ever, I'm not talking to anyone on this call in particular. Well, I'm not at all. But you could be on a call and suddenly somebody shuts off their screen. You don't know why, and you don't necessarily need to know why. It's information though. It could be, the dog started barking or the doorbell rang, or it could be they had an emotional response to something and don't want you to see it. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying be mindful of it. So now we're going to look at some scenarios, and I'm going to actually stop sharing for a minute so I can see you all while we talk through these. So here's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to add in Linda's example. I'm going to make a statement, and then I would like you to raise your hand when I ask the question and tell me what you think. So these are statements that any one of us could make at any point in time. So number one, well, she shouldn't handle the technology. Let's have a younger person do it. Here's a question. What assumption is being made? Kelly.
At a certain age, she couldn't possibly understand the technology.
Right.
What she said. Thanks, Patricia. That's exactly what I was going to say. Old people don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's very prevalent. We make a lot of assumptions about, we make the opposite assumption as well, that younger people are all good at technology. And that's not true either. So that's a very easy. So what could we stay and said? What's a more inclusive statement we could make if we're looking for someone to handle our technology? Denise?
And this is what I did actually. I would just ask who's had experience in doing different things. Like we needed a webmaster, so I just asked who was experienced in doing that kind of thing, or who would be willing to learn how to do it, because we can all learn. So you don't have to know how to use the technology, but you have to be willing to learn how to use it.
Mhm.
So I think that's, and not, and age doesn't matter in that respect. It depends on your experience and background, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, has anyone ever been in a situation where like you really wanted to do something, but you didn't volunteer because you weren't sure? And then, someone asks somebody else and makes an assumption, and it's actually something you're really good. I mean, this has happened to me. And you're like, oh, well, I would have liked to have been asked. I mean, there's a component of speaking up for yourself, but there's also a recognition that we need to know enough about our members that we know kind of what people are passionate about and interested in doing. And if we're continually going to the same people over and over, because they're good and they're great and they volunteer and they follow through, but by doing that, we can be unintentionally leaving people out that might have a lot to offer. So Denise, your example of a better way to say that is perfect. If someone were to say that, you could just say, well, let's make sure whoever feels most comfortable with the technology takes the lead on this and not make an assumption that an older person is incapable of doing it. So by doing that, what are we removing from that assumption? We're removing age, right? So we're saying age shouldn't be a factor. What matters is their skill or comfort level, the ability to choose for yourself. If we focus on those instead of what we think we know about people, then that becomes more inclusive. Okay. Okay, second example. During a committee meeting, one person repeatedly interrupts a newer member. So first question, how might the newer member feel or be affected by that?
Well, we had that exact thing, and that newer member decided not to stay. They were really put off by it, and didn't feel like their contributions were going to be accepted.
And that is the ultimate worst outcome, right? It's exactly why we're talking about this, because we don't want that to happen. So if you were to see that happen, you as leaders, how could you intervene to make that feel more inclusive? It's a statement you could make. Tammy?
I've had to say it. Can you please wait so that everybody has a chance to speak, and then we'll come back to you?
Mm-hmm. Perfect. With lots of ways to say the same thing, but that's the idea. If you see that happening, if you observe it happening, try to stop it and at least allow the person a chance to speak. Okay, number 3, I'm going to use Linda's example. So you're in a meeting and someone stands up and says, that's not how we do it in Sir Optimist, or that's not what SIA says to do. If you're on the other end of that, how does that make you feel? Debbie?
Can't find my hand. Well, I have hands. Can't find the hand on. I can't find the hand on
They
my
were waving in
screen.
the air.
I don't know. I'm doing jazz hands. It would make you feel stupid and
Yeah, that's
embarrassed to
exactly
say
what I
anything
was going to
else.
say.
Yeah.
It makes you feel stupid. And that's not what we want. Like, we don't all know every Sir Optimist protocol and rule and law, and we certainly don't know everything about SIA. We just don't. So if that were to happen, then as a leader, how would you respond to that in a way that makes the person not feel stupid and creates a more inclusive conversation?
I guess I would say, I think that's a great idea, but
This time, I don't think that's the way Sir Optimus would like us to handle it. Offer maybe to spend some time with him, giving him the background of Sir Optimus. A lot of us don't do very good orientations. And I think that it shows when things like that happen.
Or it could be just, that might be true. Let's do some research on it. I mean, I think if you have members that are doing that a lot, then I think you kind of just talk to them off to the side and say, look, don't come and make that kind of statement without backing it up, and be mindful of, A, you might not be right, and B, you're cutting off a conversation, or you're making someone feel like they did something wrong, and you might not even be right. I mean, I'm very, very cautious of these comments, like, that's not how we do it. I hear it a lot. Like, your club has its own sort of protocols, and then the region does, and then the federation does, and then there's just general how we treat people, and to kind of fall back on a set of rules. Sometimes there's a place for that, for sure. I don't want to imply that sometimes the right comment is, no, this is how we're supposed to do it. But a lot of times I see that used as a way to express disagreement over a decision that's being made. And to fall back on, say, well, we're not allowed to do that. SA says we can't do that, or SA says we have to do it this way. It immediately cuts off the conversation again. And so how you bring in kind of that knowledge of what actual rules and procedures are, and the words you choose to do it, are very important. Okay, next example.
Did you see Linda's hand?
I did not.
Okay.
Linda.
Well, you said a lot of what I was going to say, but because we were having several issues like this, what seemed to work well for us was to, like, if it had to do with, say, money or something, then someone, the president or the VP or somebody would say, let's get some clarification. So and so, your treasurer, would you mind researching that and getting back to us with, what SIA does say, or, something like that. And that seemed to be non-threatening and effective. So.
Perfect. Okay. Next example. This would be like speaking to, say, an award winner. Your story is so inspiring. I don't know how you people do it. Okay, first of all, what's problematic about the phrase "you people"? Do you hear this? I hear this.
Automatic separation.
Yeah.
You and me, and yeah.
Yeah, you're right
Us
off
and
the bat,
them.
you're implying distance, you're implying an otherness. And then
I want to chime in and say not only separation, but alienation.
yeah, for sure.
I think there's also an element of, when you say you people, it almost sounds like they're below you in a sense, right? So it's like, we're us, and then there's you, and obviously you're not as good as us, kind of thing. Whether it's, you have less money than us, or, that kind of thing, or less education, or whatever it is.
That's right. Donna?
Disrespect, yeah.
That's what I was just going to say. So disrespectful. Just really. I mean, if people, first of all, it's really hard for them to sometimes to go ahead and apply for these things in the first place. They already feel sometimes that they're at a certain level, but for us to, not for us, but for that comment to be said, it's just, and it makes us look bad. How bad does that make the other person look that said it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's also, it's then reducing that person to an identity of a group, whatever that group of you people are. And that, automatically says you're no longer an individual. I associate you with this group that has similar characteristics or identity to you.
Stereotyping.
Yeah, for sure. So what's a better way to say something like, so the conversation started well-meaning, like your story is inspiring. I don't know how you people do it. What's a better way to say that? Maria?
Congratulations on your achievement. I admire all that it took for you to get to this point. You
Yep.
should be very proud of yourself.
Yep. That works. Okay. Next scenario. A member assumes that a single mother needs help managing her finances and offers unsolicited advice. What biases might be embedded here?
Can you say it again? Judy, can you repeat it? Sorry.
Yes. A member assumes a single mother needs help managing her finances and offers unsolicited advice. Caitlin?
I would say that it would make the mother feel like she's not doing enough or that she is incapable of doing enough.
Okay. Anyone else? Kelly? Kelly
Sorry, I'm
Avalon?
sneezing over here. I would say as single mom who had that happen to me, for me it was more like, and I may have taken this all wrong, but it's like you're a single mom, clearly no man in your life. How are you handling your finances?
Pretty insulting,
That's
right?
how it felt for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rude. It's just rude.
Denise?
Say, just in general, you shouldn't offer advice, especially monetary advice, unless you're asked. It just, and not with just our awardees, but with anybody in
Yep.
general, because you're assuming that that person doesn't know what they're doing. And, a lot of our awardees are in circumstances that are out of their control. And it has nothing to do with how good they are at budgeting and that sort of thing. In
Yep.
fact, I think a lot of them are very good at budgeting because they're managing to keep their household and, keep their kids to school and all of that on a very limited budget.
Agreed. Charlotte?
I was just going to say that it's disrespectful to the person. I mean, the person saying that might have good intentions and might be trying to come from a place of wanting to help, but at its core, it would be received, I would think, as being, the person would feel disrespected. And there's another word, I can't think of it now, but anyway, so devalued, not feeling, that. It would hurt someone's confidence a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really big assumption.
Mhm.
Every single mother is poor at managing their finances. If you kind of broaden it, like it sounds ridiculous when we say it like that. What's a better way to offer our support to someone? Like the intent was to offer some support and advice, but what's a better way we could say that? I mean, it could just be as simple as, is there any support or resources that we can help you with right now? It doesn't have to be financial. It could be, just keep it generic. Like, how can we support you? Not make an assumption that we know how you need to be supported. Okay, I am going to go back to the slide. Okay. I'm going to ask you now to get out a pen and piece of paper if you have it, or make a note on your phone or whatever you want to do. I'm going to ask each of you to make a personal commitment. I would like you to think of one small change. It doesn't have to be gigantic. A small change that you can make in your communication. So as we go through these examples, some things might resonate with you. You could think of other examples that maybe we didn't talk about tonight. But think of one thing that you can do to try to improve your own communication and to make it more inclusive. It could be to speak more slowly. It could be for those of you in positions of leading meetings, making sure that you're intentionally inviting quieter members to speak up. It may be dropping a phrase that you use that you now realize could be harmful. It could be anything, but I just want to ask you, and you don't have to tell me or anyone what you're going to work on, but I'd like you to just make a personal commitment to something that you can change in the way that you communicate, with the intent of being more inclusive. And I'll just give you a minute to do that.
Judy,
Yes.
I have an interesting perspective on this one.
Okay.
I've held a major leadership position in another organization. And when you asked this question, the first thing that came to my mind is it's been really hard to switch the role from the leader to the follower.
Mm-hmm.
That that's one thing that we need to work on when we step down from leadership positions is you're no longer the final voice. You're just there. And I see it among my predecessors in different organizations is no matter how good they've done, how they conduct themselves when they're done is what is their legacy. And that's one thing I've been working on. When you asked that question, it resonated because that is something that I'm aware of and a lot of us in this room are going to be going from leaders to followers, and it's a
No,
hard
you're right.
transition and it affects
Yeah,
communication.
that's a great point, Maria. Thank you. Donna?
It was funny because that kind of happened today at work too, Maria. And a coworker of mine and I were asked to get a PowerPoint presentation ready for the rest of the group. And there was a person in the room that, is at a different level than we've been. And she even used to be at a higher level than our boss. And so basically, she was trying to tell us how to do something without allowing us to go ahead and, you know, explain what we were going to do. And I guess because she does this quite often, and I don't think she even knows she's doing it. And I just looked at her and I said, then why don't you do it? Maybe it would be better if you do the PowerPoint instead of us, because I'm afraid we're not going to do it to your expectations. And I flat out said that. And so what happened is, I think she didn't realize it. And she said, no, you guys go ahead and do it. I don't even do that work that often. And we agreed, okay, we're going to do the presentation and you're going to, because this is what you're better at, you're going to come up with the cheat sheet for the presentation. So we came up with a solution, but I just needed to let her know, don't ask, and my boss, don't ask us to do something. Don't ask us to do something if right off the bat, you don't have confidence in us.
Boy, that never happens.
Yeah. And sometimes I think that happens in our Seroptimist, in our meetings as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. It happens a lot. Don't ask someone to do something if you're not willing to let them do it. Offer your guidance, but don't try to micromanage it, right? Charlotte?
Can I ask a question about just whatever? I mean,
Yes, ma'am.
um, I have witnessed this before where we're in a meeting in Sir Optimus, and there will be a member who, to the pretty much everybody else, seems aggressive in her question and either unhappy or angry even. Okay. And then when someone goes alongside later and says, gosh, you seem, um, I don't know, for lack of a better word, accuses her of being angry or mad.
Mm-hmm.
She says, well, I'm not mad at all. You know, I don't feel that way at all. But she comes across so much that way and everyone else sees it. But does she truly not see that she is really angry and mad and makes everyone feel, that's tricky to me. I thought that was really interesting. I mean, anyway, like
Yeah.
they,
Um,
do does that make sense what I'm saying? I'm
it
not
makes perfect
communicating it very
sense.
well.
We did talk about this a little bit last time. We talked about intent versus impact, right? So intent is you're well-meaning and you're trying to say something constructive or useful, and it's perceived by the other person as hurtful or harmful. And it sometimes, most of the time, it's unintentional. You don't set out to hurt someone's feelings. Most of us don't. But it's easy to do if there's just some piece of information that we're missing, right? And so a lot of times someone that is kind of forceful and speaks with a certain tone, we all could label that person as saying, well, they're angry all the time, and they don't perceive themselves that way at all. And so the growth and the evolution comes in getting that person to understand, you know, you are coming across as angry. You can say all you want that you're not, but you need to know that's how you're being perceived. And then it's up to that person to do something about it. Like, you can't fix someone. But if they don't know, then they definitely can't fix it. So, you know, as leaders, we have to be mindful of what's happening in the room around us. And when we see those sorts of things happening, have that conversation and say, I don't know if you realize the impact you're having by speaking so forcefully. You might not intend to be angry or sound angry, but you do. And would hope that that person would, take that to heart and try to change something about the way that they communicate.
Yeah, so I guess that best thing to do would then be what you're saying would be to pull them aside one-on-one or whatever, not do it publicly, but you'd obviously talk to that person individually and share that you feel that way when she shares back, well, I'm not mad. Then you can say, well, you're coming across that way. And then it's up to them. So basically we do what we can and then we have to let it go. Is
Yeah, I
that
mean, yes. I mean, ultimately, it's kind of who's ever hurt or harmed by that should say something. Like, as leaders,
oh,
we're not necessarily. I mean, we can do that, and we can do it on others' behalf. It's more impactful when the person that's really perceiving it that way, and it could be multiple people, say something. There's power in numbers.
yeah,
Um,
that's good.
but yeah, and ultimately you can say it and say it and say it and say it. Um, and hopefully someone eventually says, well, maybe I do need to change something about the way I'm communicating. I mean, we've probably all been told at some time in our lives that, we've said something or done something that wasn't at all how we felt. But knowing that someone else perceived it that way can really make you think about how you approach that same situation in the future. There are always going to be people that never see themselves as the problem, and there's not a whole lot we can do. But yeah, good example. Okay, I'm assuming that you've all now written down your commitment. So I'm just going to kind of start to close up and say, creating an inclusive environment is not just a one-time thing. It's something we have to work at and work out and work out. It's long-term. It takes practice. It takes perseverance. It takes pushing through, and it requires our dedication and persistence to it. Keeping mindful of it and knowing that we can be observant is the key. If we're observant and respectful, I think we'll go a long way in making sure that our conversations are building trust and community and presence with each other and not being harmful. So that's all I have for tonight. Are any other thoughts or comments on this topic before we go? Expect you all to be perfect. I don't. No, the best thing we can do is hold each other accountable. I mean, hopefully we're learning that that sharing and being honest and being vulnerable is the best thing we can do to help each other grow. Tammy.
You know I'm far from perfect. You've heard all my drama. But I did want to just comment on what Charlotte was saying. Like if people think that I'm angry because I have that resting bitch face or whatever, I hope that they would pull me aside and say, you know, you look like you're mad. And because I do sometimes look like I'm mad when I'm not. So I would hope that somebody would say something to me. And I know Charlotte has, but in nice ways, because Charlotte is nothing but nice. But anyway, I thought that was something important. Thank you. Bye.
I disagree. You're my favorite person. Just saying.
And Tammy, I hope you know my example was not directed at you at all.
I know that it was not directed at me, but
it wasn't even it was not about you. So because I love and adore you. It was not about you.
Yes, Donna.
It's about no one that's on this call.
Oh, yay!
What I figured.
It was very helpful though. Thank you, Judi. I mean, I want to thank Tammy. I wouldn't be on here tonight if it wasn't for Tammy. I was on the road and at 6:15 I called her and she's like, "Oh, I'm getting ready to hop on the Zoom." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to be home. I'll be late, but thank you."
I know I was going to text you like, "Don't forget," because you keep telling me you forget.
Trust me, I didn't have my calendar up at all. So thank you, Tammy.
Donna, you got one more thought?
Well, real quick, I just wanted to say the one thing I really love about these trainings is the fact that time and time again, I learned that it's not just my club.
100%.
It's right. It's not just my club. So, you know, we don't have to feel excluded.
That's right. That's right. I mean, you're absolutely right. There are extremes always, as many extremes as there are people, but our clubs face a lot of the same situations, you know, and that's why this is important for us to work on this together, right? We can learn from each other. We can share each other's examples, mistakes, things that go well. All of that happens. So thank you for the reminder, Donna. All righty. Well, I will probably not see most of you again before Christmas. I might see a few of you, or whatever holiday you celebrate. So happy holidays to everyone. And thank you for all you do. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Judi.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Judi.
Yes.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Happy
Hey,
holidays,
Judi.
Happy
everyone.
holidays.
Judi, can you stay on so we can do a QuickBooks thing?
Sure.
No, I just have questions. I just want to run by you.
Yep. Let me stop the recording. Hold on.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I stay on too, just so I
Sure.
hear whatever you're
Sure.
asking?